All right, let's put some rumors to rest. I am not a Delta Force Navy SEAL sniper who currently works at the CIA. I'm sorry. I did get quite a bit of sleep last night, so I feel like that should probably count for something though, right? Anyways, I thought it'd be helpful to share just a little bit about myself, my background, where I'm coming from, to provide a little context for better or for worse as to the topics I talk about and how I talk about them in these videos. So if we're looking at kind of my professional life, it starts at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. I entered there in 2005, commissioned as a field artillery officer in 2009. While I was there, I majored in international relations and minored in terrorism studies. And it was a really, really cool place to be able to do that. For somebody who's interested in military history and obviously interested in the military and international relations and terrorism, things like that, being at West Point, going through those courses, gave me the opportunity to, they call them field trips in college? I don't know, but they were field trips. We went to CIA at Langley 2 or 3 different times, to the National Counterterrorism Center once, Pentagon a couple times. We got to meet with General McChrystal, who at that time I think was a 3-star in charge of Joint Special Operations Command. And I got to ask him questions, make a fool of myself, asking about a thesis I was writing about Al-Qaeda in Iraq at the time that I got horribly, horribly wrong. But it was just really cool in that environment to be able to interact with people like that are not just studying international relations and military policy, but actually implementing it out on the battlefields of Iraq and Afghanistan and all around the world. So after graduating from West Point in 2009, went out to Fort Sill, Oklahoma for the basic officer course for artillerymen. It was fine. You kind of learn the ins and outs of the trade of what lieutenants are going to need to know. And then came my first actual assignment, and that was with the 101st Airborne Division. So when I showed up in April of 2010, it would have been, I was assigned as the fire support officer for Dog Company, 2nd Battalion, 502nd Infantry Regiment. That's part of the 2nd Brigade Combat Team of the 101st Airborne. And when I got there, they were about 1 month away from deploying to southern Afghanistan. So showed up, packed the bags, went out the door with those guys. Summer of 2010 in southern Afghanistan was part of the surge. There were a ton of troops in country. I think we neared 100,000 at one point. And it was, all things considered, a relatively kinetic deployment. So my job at that time as a company fire support officer was myself, along with my team of 13 Fox forward observers, would embed with an infantry unit, in this case, Dog Company 2502, and we would coordinate the mortar, artillery, helicopter, and airstrikes should our guys get into contact. So when most people join the Army, they want to be able to actually do their job. And in a lot of cases, that means in combat, in a stressful situation, test yourself, kind of see if you're able to do what's needed. And I was very, very fortunate to be in a situation here in 2010, 2011 in southern Afghanistan, Zari District, Kandahar Province, where it was a kinetic enough environment that there were small arms fights almost every day from the time we got there in June through to about October. And then we had a little bit of a lull, November, December, January, and then early February kicked back up into really daily firefights every time, either at our little, nasty outpost that we lived at, or anytime the guys would kick out on patrol. It was a long, tough 12 months, and spent the last few months there really bouncing on air assaults, 48 and 72-hour missions all across some of the hotter areas of southern Afghanistan at that time between Zari and Maiwan district. After a little bit of time back home in Fort Campbell, turned around and went back to Afghanistan, this time as part of a small advisory team. We were helping stand up the howitzers, the D-30 howitzers, in a part of eastern Afghanistan. I was based out of Fob Gambari and Logman province, but we bounced around working with the A&A between Nangarhar, Nuristan, Logman, and Kunar provinces. That one was only 9 months, so compared to the 12, seemed like we were there and back pretty quick. In both of these deployments, though, I think the sentiment with everybody was that the Afghans weren't quite ready to take over for themselves. Kind of hoped that they would get there eventually, and it seemed like they were closer when we left than when we got there. But at the end of the day, we were doing a lot for them still. And, looking back now, however we went about standing up the Afghan armed forces, I think it's probably fair to say we didn't do it correctly. After that deployment, it was back to Fort Campbell for about 2 years, where I was in the S3 shop, the plans for the 1st Battalion, 320th Field Artillery Regiment, which at that time was exclusively 105 millimeter howitzers. Right about then, I met my wife, was thinking about what the next steps would be. 1 year of prep school, 4 years of West Point, 5 years active duty. I wanted to try something new, so I left active duty in 2014. Worked in the private sector at a tech company out of Chicago, then a commercial real estate firm down in Austin, Texas. And in 2017, so after about a 2.5 year break there of missing the military, missing the soldiers, I jumped back into the Texas Army National Guard. Down in the Lone Star State, I worked in a HIMARS battalion, first as the battalion fire direction officer, kind of coordinating the fires for the whole battalion, and then some time as a HIMARS battery commander. Again, just another solid group of soldiers and NCOs that were a lot of fun to be around. At that time, 2017, 18, 19, HIMARS was being used quite a bit in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria by U.S. forces. We were pretty heavily focused on North Korea. There was just a lot ramping up over there at that time, and that seemed like where you might actually end up using HIMARS. I had no idea at that time just how impactful this weapon system would be in the hand of another country, like Ukrainians, firing against a conventional force in the Russian military. Then in 2020, my wife, daughter, and I moved up to Murfreesboro, Tennessee to start a small business. So the day job, if you will, outside of all of this, is that my wife and I own a drop-in daycare center here in town. That move made it kind of hard to keep going with the Texas Army National Guard, so I made the jump over to the Army Reserve, and that's what I'm doing now. I'm a major in a training division, currently going through, for the reserves, they have like these remote versions of the Command and General Staff Officer course. Kind of tied in with Army Reserve, but not really. I'm also a volunteer admissions liaison for West Point for a couple of the congressional districts here in Tennessee. So the idea there is that I'm kind of a resource for high school students in the area that are thinking about going to West Point, answering questions for them or their family, what life is like at the academy, what it's like after, and then helping them through the admissions process. I've been incredibly fortunate that through some of these platforms, I've been contacted by some, media companies to do work for them or actually work for them. And it's so incredibly humbling. But at the end of the day, it is hard to beat waking up in the morning and talking about whatever it is I want to talk about. Not worried about guidance, direction, editorial control, anything like that. Just it comes to mind. I start thinking about it. I'm interested. Here comes a video, for better or for worse. Now, outside all of this content and videos, I am an amateur beekeeper, a bad CrossFitter, and an even worse hunter. Those are things I really enjoy doing. I think I would enjoy more if I got better at some of them, but we're trying to get into the woods more often, trying to spend more time each week in the gym, but fighting against gravity at this point. And finally, grew up in Champaign, Illinois, University of Illinois, so still got some family back in the area. That's where the Maze Mexican Grill shirt comes from. But that's it. That's all I got. I just really, really appreciate y'all being here. Just watching and commenting and adding your thoughts. It's awesome. These are subjects that I'm very, very interested in, and I'm far from the most knowledgeable in all of them, but I enjoy throwing them out there and seeing what you have to say and people pointing me in different directions and you got to check this guy out or don't watch that guy, whatever it might be. It's been a lot of fun. I've learned more than I ever could have imagined. So just again, thank you. Thank you for being here and looking forward to seeing what the future brings. We'll see y'all.